So our New Testament reading this morning comes to us from Luke's Gospel, the 7th chapter. And listen now, friends, for the word of the Lord. Soon afterwards, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the gate of the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow. And with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her and said to her, "Do not weep." Then he came forward and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, rise." The dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized all of them, and they glorified God, saying, "A great prophet has risen among us, and God has looked favorably on his people." This word about him spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country. This is the word of the Lord. So I looked at my calendar this past week and saw that this coming week, the Ulasewich clan will celebrate our 10th month here among you. We're excited about that. I'm excited about that. Our kids have made it through a year of school here in Conway. We're blessed and grateful for that. We went out recently to celebrate them and their accomplishments this year, and now we're entering into summer together. And we know summer, right? It's warmer, things kind of slow down a little bit in some ways, and it's time for, family time and road trips, and we're looking forward to that. Some of my earliest memories go back to sitting in the back of my parents' station wagon. Yes, in the back, remember? When we didn't have to be in our own seats and strapped in and all that good stuff. Rolling around back there, watching the cars and trucks go by. I can remember stopping at gas stations and hoping that they had a Coke machine, right? Because that was back before there was a miniature supermarket at every gas station. And I can remember cassette tapes because records would skip in the car. And how you could, put about 10, or if you had one of those blank tapes that went 90 minutes, you could maybe put 20 songs on there, and you had to bring a whole bunch for a long trip to shuffle them in and out, unless you wanted to listen to the radio. 10 or 20 songs, right? 20 to 30,000 songs. A little bit of a change, isn't it? Things have changed around us. We've seen it. Each of us who carry one of these things with access to the internet has in our pocket more access to more data than the president had in the 1980s. If we want to see what's going on in another part of the world, we can not only look up feeds and streams, news blotters of it, but we can pick up live streams and sometimes live video footage of what's going on in so many different parts of the world. And that world is transforming around us. My kids, until very, very recently, didn't know what commercials were. We would go to a hotel and they would want to watch something they want to watch. We'd have to explain to them, no, at home, see, we have streaming internet TV. We don't have cable TV. We haven't for years. So our kids don't know what commercials are. And our kids thought, well, when you want to watch SpongeBob, you just push the button. You don't have to flip through channels and hope that they're actually showing it right now. It's a different world. It's transformed around us. Last year, as an English teacher, we used to teach our students the difference between a static character and a dynamic character. And a static character is a character that stays relatively the same throughout, and a dynamic character is a character that experiences some kind of significant change. Now, a character can get a new haircut, and that doesn't make them dynamic. It's just a change in appearance. But a dynamic character is something that's changing on the inside. The world is transforming dynamically, not just on the outside. It's not just the technology that's changing what we can do, because the technology is changing the way our brains think. And younger people who've always known the internet, or even younger people who've always known smartphones. I used to think it would be so great in the future when we could watch TV whenever we wanted, carry it around with us. And now that we have it and I'm a parent, I'm not so sure it's that great after all. The beginning of the epic Lord of the Rings, Galadriel starts it. Remember what she says? The world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. It's ominous there when she says it that way. And it can be ominous to us to see the transformation the world is going through. It can be ominous. Or it could be fun. Bear with me. How could it possibly be fun? Remember when we were a child? When you were a child and everything that was new was exciting? And you wanted to learn the next new thing and the next new trick and the next new game, and it was so exciting. When I was a kid, we played with Transformers. I mean, how funny is that, right? We're talking about transformation, and I'm thinking about the Transformers I played with when I was a kid. I had Optimus Prime. I had Megatron. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it. It's not going to be a test. But one would start as a robot and change into a Mack truck and then back to a robot. It was amazing. Or Legos, right? Everybody knows Legos. You can put together whatever you want, and then take it apart, and then put together whatever you want again. The world is changing. About 500 years ago, the world went through a massive change. It started with technology like the printing press and things like that made, book and learning something that everybody could experience, not just the wealthy, not just those in the church like monks and so forth. And suddenly the world changed dramatically. And we entered into a period of enlightenment, what's called enlightenment. And the idea was that it was the age of reason, and we can reason out everything. And there was such enthusiasm about science and philosophy that we could discover everything and piece it all together, and then we'd know everything, and we could control anything and everything. We're entering into another period of rapid change, or we've already entered into that period of rapid change where we're discovering that we can't know everything and we can't control everything. And we're also aware of the dangers of trying, because when factions of people believe their way is right and everybody else's way is wrong, that's when we get to the kinds of violence that we see in the news these days. And so we've entered into a new era, whether we like it or recognize it or not. In many ways, the world is changing. It's not just the technology, it's the mindset. Younger people see the world differently. Physiologically, their brains are developing differently. Now, I'm going to give you some markers of this new era of history that folks believe we're entering into, called postmodernism. It's not going to be a test. And I'm not wanting you to get all this, but if you see one or two of these and say, I've seen that, I get what you're talking about. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here, okay? Does that make sense? So I don't want you to, you don't have to get all this. You don't have to follow me with everything here. But one thing is the world is smaller, right? I think we can all agree, with our technology, we can converse with people around the world in real time now, right? It's a smaller world, and we know what's going on. And what happens in, all the way across the world affects us every day in some way. And so we have a global economy and a global culture. We embrace those voices that maybe in prior generations we didn't get to hear from, various peoples around the earth that didn't have a voice. We're trying to listen to them. We're trying to hear and appreciate people who are different from us. Now, here's one that really alarms a lot of people, particularly in some churches. There's a sense in which truth might vary from person to person. And so for a modern, it looks like truth is relative. To a postmodern, they would say, I understand from my experience life and the world to be a certain way, and others might understand life and the world from their experience to be different. There's an emphasis of relationship or experience over truth in this worldview. There's an emphasis on authenticity. Whatever you claim to be your truth, you better live it out in your life or it'll be noticed. This is why it's so important that we who are Christians these days need to do what we say, because younger generations see through it if we don't. There's an interest in the spiritual, but less of an interest in doctrine. And we've talked a little bit about that. I don't want to get too far into that. I believe doctrine is important. I just believe for people outside the church these days, they want to see how what we have can change them before they want to know what it is we believe. So all these things, can you relate to some of them? You may not agree with them, but have you seen these things around you? Have you noticed them in the culture around us? Yes? No? See some folks nodding yes. What do we do with that? How do we understand if we're sort of in between the modern world and the postmodern world, and if we're not even sure, especially if we're not sure that we agree with all the aspects of this new thing that's coming in upon us? It's a tricky thing. It's especially tricky in places, intergenerational places, or places where people can tend to have worldviews, and I know I'm generalizing here, but we work together and live together, such as the church, where we can tend to see things differently from one another. And those who are more inclined to be modernists want resolution for conflict and issues, and postmoderns resist resolution. They want dialogue. They want to talk about it, but they don't feel anxiety about solving the problem yet. How do we do that in church together? How do we do that? We have a society so polarized, and we've seen it. We've seen the red state, blue state phenomenon, and we've seen it seem to get worse throughout the years, right? The last 10, 20 years or so. I mean, even in our election, right? We have people who want to make America great again, right? That's an appeal to those who want to be part of the right team. And being a part of the right team means you make it the right winning team. Then there are others who want to be with her. That's experiential, right? And then we might have others who are feeling the burn. With her is relational. Feeling the burn is experiential. Now, I'm not endorsing any candidate here or putting down any candidate here. But they know who their base is that they're trying to appeal to and what their worldview might be. Does that make sense? So they're very intelligent about who they're reaching out to and how and why. And so I think we as Christians need to be scholars of the society around us and figure out how we respond. What is our place? How do we carry the banner of the kingdom into a new era if a new era is upon us? And how do we as a church get along when we might be inclined to see the world so very differently from one another? I have some answers, but I'm not going to give them to you today. I know, isn't that awful? Because I think we're going to do something in a few minutes that makes my answers moot. We get to meet at Christ's table. And to me, that kind of washes all of that away. It's not that we don't cease to see things differently, sometimes, you and I. But it's that at Christ's table, we recognize that God is big enough for modernists, for postmodernists, for whatever your worldview or philosophy is. God was the God in the Middle Ages. God was the God in the early church, God will be the God forever, regardless of how people see the world or view the world or understand the world. And we enter into that relationship with God, who is also the truth, the way, the truth, and the life. And so though the world may be transforming around us, God is still God. Generations come and go. We are all part of the church, from the foundation of the church till the day when every knee bows and every tongue confesses. God is our God. God of the modern, God of the postmodern. The communion table is still the place where we meet together. Now, I know that transformation feels scary, and to some degree, we don't have a choice about these larger changes that go on in the world around us. And that is scary, and it feels ominous. We have a financially scary world, a politically scary world. Who do we trust? Who do we follow? There's violence and terror, and it hits closer and closer to home throughout the years. People are anxious, polarized. It might feel as if there's chaos around us. And yet that's the very place out of which God operates. God created the world out of chaos. God entered into the chaos of death on our behalf and came out the other side. And we know that transformation can be more deep down than just fear. Some of our favorite characters from childhood are characters that undergo amazing transformations. Cinderella, Ebenezer Scrooge, the Ugly Duckling. Think of the magnificent transformations that they make. They reboot everything these days, right? They're rebooting MacGyver. I still love MacGyver. As a kid, I'd watch the show. I mean, he'd take some twigs and rubber bands and turn it into a car or something, right? The transformations that would take place would just be so amazing. I think at its core, we can love transformation if we can get past the fear. And it is scary to think that the world's changing. When we've made our niche in the world and we've done everything we can do to protect that place in the world. What if the world changes and we don't have that place anymore? Well, friend, you will have a place here in the church. And it might help you feel a little bit more secure about whatever's happening in the world around us to remember who's piloting the ship. Couple passages, and I know I'm talking a lot today. There's a big topic, as you can see. Elisha the prophet, not Elijah, Elisha the prophet, was surrounded by an enemy army. And it looked pretty grim, but he wasn't afraid. His servant, though, was petrified. And Elisha prayed to God. He said, "Oh Lord, please open his eyes, my servant's eyes, that he may see." And in 2 Kings 6, we're told, "So the Lord opened the eyes of the servant, and he saw the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha." That was God's angel army. But he had to have his eyes opened, the servant did, to see that. We have to have our eyes open to see that God is the author of history. Whatever is going on in the world around us, it will be well. Because God is leading where we will go. And so the Son, we looked at this passage in the fall, I know, but the Son, Jesus Christ, sees another son who has died. And a mother's life has no hope now. Because in that day and time, without a husband or a son to care for her, she had little hope. Fortunately, that's one way the world has transformed, and we're glad about that. But in this case, this poor woman has nothing and no hope. And Jesus steps forward and transforms that. He makes dead tissue live again. That's a transformation. And do you think that she can go back to living her life the way she did before, or the son? It's going to be totally different now. She's encountered God who gave her son life. And the son, he was dead and now he's alive. What a transformation. The world is different. We can see that. And the way we perceive the world is different. We see that. It calls for the church to take different postures, to use different techniques to do ministry, to have different understandings of the world around us and what people need. It calls for more compassion for the anxiety people feel. It calls for more listening, to try to understand one another and where they're coming from. It calls for more patience with each other. Ultimately, it calls for more faith in God. Because we do not have all the answers, but we know who does. Ultimately, our problems, our anxieties aren't going to be solved by the latest medications or the next technology, or even who goes into the White House next. I hope they solve some of the problems, but doubtless they won't get to all of them. The world has changed. But when we recognize that God is the one in control, we can rest in the firm and certain knowledge, to quote John Calvin, that God loves us in Jesus Christ and will guide and direct the church through the power of the Spirit. This God who can multiply food, this God who came to make the dead rise and live again, and who will guide us safely into whatever eras of history may come our way. Friends, next week we'll be talking about personal transformation that takes place within us when we come to know Jesus Christ and walk with Him. I hope that you will join us and be a part of that together.